welcome to our podcast. My name is Abraham,
My name is Kristie.
and this is our final podcast for our EDUC 661 Equity in College and Career Access. Um, okay, so yeah, Chrissy. So let's see. We want to go over a certain problem that we're seeing today, correct?
Yeah. So I think this is something I've noticed in my job, but we have noticed that the persistence in marginalized groups in higher education, I guess like for some, like to name some, I guess like low income, first gen, um, their persistence is dropping. And today we're just going to talk about like why it's a problem, why it matters, I guess what causes it, and how, and some solutions that we have for it. But I'll just introduce myself first. So my name is Chrissy. I identify as first gen Asian American, low income, and also only child. And yeah, and Abraham.
Yeah, my fault. Should have done the introduction. Yeah, hey, my name's Abraham Howdy. First gen, Hispanic male, he, him, his. Sorry, I'm going all out of order here. Also, single child, yeah, only child. So, yeah, cool, commonalities. Yeah, Chris, I just want to circle back real quick. So you had mentioned that this is also sort of a situation I'm seeing in my own job, but so the overall decline in persistence for like these marginalized communities, um, we both work in the 2 year setting. Do you also see that happening in the 4 year? Like, is it sort of universal here, or what's your observation there?
I guess for 4 year, I am not entirely sure, but for sure in the 2 year, I just see it like I guess in my everyday work sometimes. I guess not like specifically saying that persistence isn't going up or anything, but I do notice that my students in my caseload, many of them are like they're dropping out of their classes or they're failing it, they're not coming back for the next semester. And I'll notice that they're also from the marginalized groups that we just named. So a lot of them are first gen. A lot of them are on financial aid. They're like Black slash Latino, sorry, descent. Um, so that's just like one commonality I noticed, which is why like I wanted to talk about it today. Yeah.
No, no, for sure. No, thank you for sharing it too. And I honestly think that's something I've seen just across the board as well, like in the 2 year setting at least. And really too, I think you touched upon an interesting point there. It's like the you said like first gen, low income, on financial aid. If we really think about it, like I think if not all, like the majority of like community college students in California are just that. They're all low income, first generation on financial aid, most likely student of color, you feel me? So
Yeah.
I think that's just an interesting point you brought up too. And then I think that may just be, I don't know if you could say that's like a leading cause of it, but that's definitely one of the situations that we're finding ourselves in, leading to like for us to observe this overall like lower persistence, right?
Hmm.
Um, and yeah, so I think we want to, and definitely that like kind of like transition to over into like the job market and stuff too. And they're just like it's just like a spiral effect pretty much. You feel me?
Yeah.
That makes sense?
Yeah. I agree.
Yeah.
I don't know why I didn't mention it earlier, but like I'm also studying specifically minorities in STEM for my thesis. And there's also like evidence that persistence is an issue. For example, in November 2009, Barack Obama, the former president, he implemented the Educate to Innovate campaign because he noticed that the STEM workforce is not diverse enough. Like we're basically seeing honestly, mostly white males dominating the STEM fields. So he started I guess, this campaign as a way to focus on underrepresented populations in STEM by introducing new internship opportunities for students at all college levels, um, and then providing more funding for these like tutoring at different campuses. So I like it's a pretty prevalent issue, I would say, and it's backed up by for like by this. Like this is a campaign that he started because he saw the need to diversify the STEM workforce. Um, yeah. Yeah.
No, no, no. Thanks for sharing. And that was honestly that was a lot of like useful information, and I think there was sort of a lot to unpack there.
Mhm.
So you said, and correct me if I'm wrong, but like you said, he began because of just like the underrepresentation, like in the STEM field, like in the professional STEM field, correct?
Yeah, it's I guess for STEM it's not just like certain ethnicities, but it's also women. So it's literally just anyone that would feel marginalized in the STEM field. And he's just saying that the work field is not diverse enough, and that's because people like students are of dropping out or switching out of STEM when they're in college. Um, yeah, just to clarify.
No, no, I feel you. Cool. And I think also that kind of like opens the door into like this other part where it's definitely, you know, just like people of color, women of color, just, all minority groups entering the STEM field too. It's just from like what we've seen here, it's definitely that lack of representation and like
Mhm.
really like understanding, okay, like why was it why are we finding ourselves in this situation to begin with? You feel me? And I think that definitely ties back into like the academic side of things, like really going back excuse me, to like the what was it, uh the 18th century, just coming back to
Mhm.
the infancy of the US, like looking at how the how higher institution systems work back then, like they weren't created for like people like us, people of color looking to get into the STEM field, women, just any other minority groups, right? Like more specifically, it was only catered to like white, able-bodied, heterosexual, Christian men,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, um, but and unfortunately, that's like carried over into like today's age. You feel me? So I think that's why we're still seeing like that lack of representation. Um, like I'm just gonna go off of STEM here, but like in the STEM field, like at the academic or like at the scholastic level at higher ed, just like the knowledge of like understanding really how to navigate through college, like having to pay for it, having to do all this, and then on top of that, like looking into the actual like academic side of all the STEM stuff, all the math, all the science, you feel me? So
Yeah.
that's just a whole other like world for like these students who
Mhm.
just not that they've never like experienced this before. They don't have like a family member to turn to. Oftentimes it's like they don't even have a community to look to for help to seek that assistance, right? And then that's from what I've seen at least, that's kind of why we see those lower persistence rates. Um,
Yeah.
like just from my observance, like in the tier setting in respect to like the STEM majors too.
Yeah.
It's just sort of from what I'm observing though.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with everything you just said. I like the part where, or I like what you just said about the lack of representation in the field, which I guess can also translate to just students in general, the marginalized students in general. I mean, I do think like sometimes they might not see people that look like them in college, or yeah, like they just don't have anyone to look to for help if they ever needed it in college. So a lot of the times they're just navigating college by themselves. Um, which brings up another question, or like, sorry, that just opens up like another question is besides lack of representation, what other causes, what are the other causes that you might have for why persistence is so low?
Well, at least from my work, so I primarily work with, I mean, I really just only work with like students who are parents. So like diving in, or like who are like, I'm more specifically, it's like CalWORK students, right? So like those students are like student parents and like the way they receive um like their cash aid from like the government. It's like by doing an activity and they choose to do it through school.
Hmm.
So just like it just as this as an example, um, like you really have to consider like, okay, first they're a parent, which like not neither one of us are. Um, so it's like really having to like unpack like all that entails. Like it's not just like, oh, okay, I have to like take my kid. I learned this recently too. It's like I don't just have to like wake my kid up, take him to school, come back, feed him throughout. It's like no, they gotta like on top of all that, then they gotta look at the hospital stuff, and then the kid gets sick, and then they got a few kids, and then you know,
Yeah.
realistically, there's like some like legal issues and like this and that, and like in some cases there's like humanitarian concerns. So like there's just a lot of complex things going on in like their own like each of their own lives. And then on top of that, there's like all the whole bureaucracy of like the county side and the state side of things and like how they get their money and stuff. So then that's also another weighted pressure. And then the academic side of stuff too. The academic side of this as well. Like one doing well in school, like following your ed plan, like making progress in it, working toward a degree, like all this. It's a lot. So I mean, I'm not saying that's the reason why like people are like just like the persistence level is lowered for those groups, but really understanding how like these specific communities do have or run into a lot of those same issues where it's like they may just not have that same sort of support as like the typical or the traditional like college student like would. Um, again, like most the way schools are built for is like, white men. And a lot of white men just in general don't run into like issues with having to like raise their family, how to like take care of government stuff, getting child support. Really, at any point, it's just like looking at school and be like, all right, this is the only thing I have to tackle and sort of navigating through that to a certain extent. Um, excuse me. Yeah, so I don't know. I think there's like you could just keep diving into this and see like, okay, like it's just such complex lives of like every single student. And like I think somewhere in that they realize like, or they kind of feel, at least I kind of ran into this situation before where it's like, I don't, I don't really see anyone going through this like me. So I don't know if there's help out there. I feel like I should just like not, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Like it's just it's very I think the lack of representation is kind of a broad term. Like it's not just not seeing someone look like them in a certain field or being at college. It's also like not feeling like they belong at a campus because they just have so much to do. And I think like a lot of times like students they kind of think of it very simplistically like should I not work and use those hours to study or should I work and be able to support the family? And that's I think that's a very common issue that marginalized students have when they're in college is like where is their time best used? And oftentimes they might say it's not college because they could be making money instead at a job. Uh, but yeah.
No, yeah,
Yeah.
no, yeah, go on. Yeah. Um, you had brought up a great point there too. I forget exactly how you worded it, but like the definitely the pressures of like having to take care of other priorities and things like that. What I'm trying to get to, it's like sometimes there are like those societal pressures, right? And like on a micro scale, it could be example like you're a student in STEM, this, you don't have a lot of familiarity within this like sort of field. You don't really see yourself represented in the field. And then at home you have a parent or maybe a couple of parents saying like, oh, just like get a job already, get into the job field, like put food on the table. So there's that sort of added like societal sort of pressure or like that sort of situation there where definitely I think like students you had mentioned like they maybe not see they maybe aren't able to see themselves like in the actual like flesh like not seeing themselves represented that way but like really understanding that there are other communities out there who do have that same who do run into those same issues and luckily I think at I don't think at like every community college, some colleges do it better than others, but they have those affinity groups that really like tie everything in and show each other, show these students with like different intersectionalities, like showing them like, okay, here's like our intersectionalities and like here are the things we all have in common, kind of, and then here's how we can navigate through this together. And then specifically on the schools end, like really knowing how to support those students in a way that's most appropriate for their specific populations. Um, I don't know. So I think that's one like I wouldn't say it's the bright side of all this, but I would definitely think it's I think it's a way like we're observing it now, or like that schools are observing it now to like figure out a way as to how we could solve it. But yeah, affinity groups, I guess.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think I don't think I personally took advantage of that when I was a STEM student, so I felt like a lot of it was just me doing all the work by myself, and it's just why I'm not really a STEM student anymore. But I think affinity groups don't get enough credit for the work that they do. I guess it's because sometimes the effect that affinity groups have isn't really like seen. It's kind of just like I think sometimes like we just like I guess like the taxpayers or the ones that fund it, they just kind of see it as like a club, but it's more than that. It helps students like find a home on campus. Um, but like moving on to like the financial part, since I just mentioned it, I think another reason why persistence is so bad for marginalized groups is that college is pretty expensive. Even at the I think even though community college is more affordable than a university, it's still sometimes really expensive to pay out of pocket for each unit.
Yes.
So, yeah, I think like that's a big part, especially when like a student takes a class and they finish it, but then they fail, then it's kind of like, wow, that money that they use for that class is a waste of time. Why keep trying? So that might be like another reason why persistence is so bad. Oh, what do you think?
No, no, and all valid reasons, honestly. And thank you for bringing those up too. And I think like, even finding yourself or for one to find themselves in like the affinity group that's like quote unquote like right for them. Like I think on an outside level, like a student could see these groups and be like, oh, okay, just for example, right? There's UGMA, which is like for Black students, like Black academia, things like that. There's like trio programs or ZOPNS, things like that. On the surface, I think if either one of us or like of myself, when I was at the 2 year setting, if I were to see that and just be like, oh, okay, I think it's just a club of people who, for whatever reason, they just kind of gathered and found like, okay, this is a club for me. Um, but then definitely, like, I think once you're able to open up that door for them and let them like not let them just look inside, like actually be a part of it. You could, or the students themselves, they could see like, okay, like again, like here are like people with like same situations, I'm not same situations that I'm in, very similar ones. And then like those groups or those specific affinity groups, like they could offer like, different sorts of resources to them as well. Again, just depending on the school. Um, for UPNS, for example, they have, I mean, there's certain like, I don't know what you call them. Let's just call them vouchers, right? Let's just say, yeah, I think that's what they're called. They have like, example, this is just one example, but like they
Yeah.
have vouchers.
Mm-hmm.
So like that way, it's like, oh, okay, like at least I don't have to worry about paying for this out of pocket. Like that's maybe a lift some sort of financial burden on that end too. And then even then, like you brought up another great point where it's like, shoot, like what if I failed this class? Like, what and what now? Like I think being a part of those groups and like having those like dedicated counselors kind of shows them like, okay, you can add or drop this class by a certain deadline and get a refund. You could withdraw from this class by a certain point and either get a W on your transcript or you don't get a W on your transcript. And sometimes like you have the ability to like retake classes over a certain amount of like sometimes it depends on school, but sometimes you could take a classes maybe a few times over if you get a subpar grade and so you get a passing one. So I mean, there's all these little intricacies and like all these, all the technical stuff of the academic side of things that they could just once, not even once they're in, but like once if they're a part of them, like they're they're exposed to all this stuff, right? And I think that's one of the beautiful things about it. Um, I honestly I forgot where I was going there, but the financial aid side of things too, right? Like they do
Yeah.
offer different opportunities in that sense as well. Like I think you know, each affinity group, I feel like they keep it low key, but like each one, like they have their own scholarships opportunities, right? I know for sure CalWorks has one, UPNS has one, or a few on their end. Um, I'm not too sure how it's working with other programs like CORE, Ujima, what's the other one? Um,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
you know, there are other ones geared more toward those specific populations of students, um, just to give them that opportunity. Otherwise, that they may have not known about, you know?
No, yeah, I agree. I like it seems like these affinity groups are kind of the solution because it's not just like they don't just help with students belonging on campus, but it also gives them mentors and a guide to navigate college basically. Because I think like if they're not in the groups, they're most likely just going to see college very simply. And I think we both know that college is very complex. So having someone that already is like on the inside and knows the ins and outs of college, like financial aid and everything like that, it would improve persistence because students have the knowledge, they would have the knowledge that they need to persist in college. I think because like it doesn't just include feeling like they belong on campus, it's also having access to certain services or like certain student services like tutoring, like the food pantry. Um,
Yes.
I guess all those resources wouldn't be they wouldn't know about it unless they talked to someone on campus, which I think is very simple. It's like a simple but not that simple solution to solving persistence. Um, but
No,
yeah,
yeah, 100%. And I think, you know, like there's definitely not going to be like this isn't a TikTok video where it's like here's 5 steps to like, you know, fix persistence rates, you know, for marginalized students, but you know, if there were any steps to take for sure, I think like for sure there's not one way of solving this, right? But for sure if there's going to be any ways to solve it, it's like beginning at what like at our roles as educators, right? Really interrogating these systems of like oppression by one like just fostering that sense of community for these students in general, like whichever student you come across, really like working with them, not analyzing them, but like leaning in and understanding where they're coming from, offering them those different resources, I guess informing them, that's a better way of saying it. Make those referrals, make those connections, and like however far that student wants to go, that's ultimately up to them. But again, like you brought up a great thing too, and that's really the overarching theme here is like to find that sense of community or to help the students find that sense of community, promote which help again promote like access to like different resources on campus, which is like again like numerous things really.
yeah,
But yeah,
yeah.
I don't know. What do you think of that? What do you make of it?
Um, it's just very similar in that they just have to be it's not just being at college, but also taking advantage of what they have there. Um, yeah. They so I think that could lead to like what we like, evidently want to talk about is the solutions that we might have for the persistence issue that we see in marginalized identities. And I think it's really hard because every student is complex. But some things that I came up with that we haven't talked about, besides like affinity groups and taking advantage of free resources on campus, is financial aid literacy. I think this is very important. This is something that I learned recently in one of my classes that students that have better financial aid literacy are more likely to persist in college just because they understand how to pay for college. So that's why they might be more incentivized to stay compared to those who don't know much about financial aid. They might just see it as like paying a lot and then not seeing the return from it. Um, And this is also not seen at every community college, but for the ones I don't know specifically which college campuses have it, but some offer like I think like a 1 unit financial aid literacy class, and the students that take those, they're they're obviously going to be better off than those who don't. So I think this is something that should be implemented or at least offered at all community colleges.
Yeah.
Yeah. Uh, I also mentioned non-credit programs. I think this is something I never knew about when I was this, sorry, when I was at a community college. But I just recently learned that they're literally free classes that students can take, and it would help with, I guess, like basic skills, like using Microsoft Office or typing. And I think that's really good, especially for as a student, like we're always typing. So
Mhm.
being able to take free classes, I think would also incentivize students to stay on the college campus if they're like, oh, this class is free, so I'll stay here. But
Yeah.
yeah, do you have anything else to add?
You know, from that, and thank you for bringing those up too. I think also I didn't really, I knew about non-credit classes. I didn't really know about them. I heard about them when I was at the 2 year, but it wasn't until recently where I also found that out, like, oh, it's, learning how to like, do all the computer stuff, use Excel, all that. But then like they go down to like the most basic things, like really just like learning how to like read at a like I can't even talk right now. Learning how to read at a elementary sort of school level. So for like people who are coming in from other countries who have very little English,
Yeah.
that's what they can help them out with. And then like showing them like or really teaching them how to like write very basic sentences, like showing them or helping them learn the difference between like an adjective and a verb and things I think most of us wouldn't even like really think of. But those are just some of the things like people really do need when coming into the community college programs in general, like open access, that's the mission. So, I mean, there are different things like that. And point I'm trying to get to with that too, it's like, wow, it's like I'm learning how to speak English here. Like there are other opportunities that could open up. And like those people who do like lead those courses, the majority of the time they're tied into like the counseling profession. So like those educators can also like show them, like lead them into the different affinity groups and like continue to promote that sense of inclusivity for them however many years down the line. Um, yeah, I kind of went off there, but yeah, non-credit. Um, but yeah, I think yeah, those are some of the main ones too. Definitely empowerment groups like we have been talking about. Um,
Mm-hmm.
um,
I
yeah,
feel yeah, I feel like empowerment groups are like the biggest ones because um they just help open doors for students. I think we already see it now because we're both success coaches. We are part of affinity groups where we take care of first year students or completion students, continuing students, and I find that a lot of the students that do reach out just to like success coaches in general, not just me, they find us very useful, which is I'm very glad that success coaches exist. Um, but yeah, I think the biggest, at least personally, I don't know if you agree, but the biggest solution in persistence for marginalized identities is affinity groups. And I say that like as a broad term, so it includes like FYE and then like ethnic groups, even athletics, uh, DSPS, EOPNS, like all these programs where like I think in one, at least one of these groups, students can find a home. Even STEM is, I think, also an affinity group. So yeah.
for sure. Like we said, find the home.
Mhm.
Really, I think that's all it kind of boils down to. It's like really just like finding your home in whichever sort of like institution that the student's at, and then I mean that's really all they could do on their end. Like I think our jobs as educators, again, it's like make that their home, like really foster that sense of community, remind them that not just remind them, but like show them that they're welcome, continue to show up for them, advocate for them throughout like the roughest times, the times that they're feeling lost. I remember when I, I forgot how I sort of worded this or how I came across this one point, but it was like, do you remember when like when you were in school? like at the 2 year setting and like you ran into like one of the darkest situations or like the saddest, toughest, whatever that situation may have been.
Yeah.
And there were times where you're like, damn, like I just need a miracle or I just need an angel. Like as an educator, like you're now that miracle. You're now that angel that that student was praying for. The hype, you know what I mean? But like you know,
Hmm.
like you're in that position now, and I think given the not you, but like I mean you, but like all of us, right? When given the agency, I think that's like a really powerful thing to do and to really take advantage of that to help out the students. But
Yeah,
yeah,
I agree.
but yeah, yeah, I just want to be mindful of time here. So I think that was a that was a pretty it was a pretty cool conversation we had. I don't know, Chrissy, any other comments or
No, I agree. I'm glad we had this conversation because I do think like it's very important. Like not just to diversify the workforce, but just to, like you said, equal access. Because I think equal opportunity doesn't always mean equal access. So we have to like I think just like as our job, we have to try to even the playing field for all students at all different levels and from all different backgrounds. So, yeah, I'm very appreciative of the conversation we had. Um, and I hope our listeners do too. But yeah, that's all from me.
likewise. All right. Thank you, Chrissy. Thank you for joining us today. And until next time, everyone.
Yes, thank you.
Peace.